Hello to the chicas and the chicas. Today we are going to take a journey to Endgame land, and this is a very appropriate timing for that, as I am completely snowed under with work, which are all associated, or which is all associated with my next Chessable project, which is going to be an Endgame technique course. In it, I'm going to talk about the fact that one of the most common winning tools, methods in chess endgames when up material is the liquidation or simplification into king and pawn endings, as generally speaking they tend to lend themselves to almost automatic play, where if you are up material you are winning. Now what I'm gonna do today is I'm going to show you two notable exceptions to this rule. This game was played by me in a bullet environment. I was recording some material for my YouTube shorts, and unfortunately I misplayed this endgame, but something very interesting happened here, so I really wanted to share with you because it is really fun. So in this position, me playing white just played f4, correct move, and objectively speaking this position is a draw, right? And the easiest way to draw this for black is to force my pawn onto a white square and then just come back down here. And the 4 versus 3 is not really doable, especially since my bishop always has to babysit the pawn. Otherwise, black will go after it, and then I would even be in trouble. However, my opponent thought that the rule of outside pass pawn rules it all, like those notorious rings in Lord of the Rings. And so he offered me a bishop trade, which by the way I can't really decline, because then the pawn falls, and again this guy is a super speedy runner. But what is the evaluation of this pawn ending exactly is the big question here. And in fact, if you are up for a challenge, and I recommend that you take this challenge, pause the video now and try to investigate the outcome if both sides play the best moves. And I emphasize both because it's super easy to go wrong with either color. Even in the analysis I made mistakes, right? So give it time. If you want this challenge, you will need at least 10 minutes. And with that out of the way, I'm going to show you now what is afoot here. So obviously I have got 4 on 3 and they are running real fast, but it's super easy to botch this. E4 is one of the many winning moves. G4 and F5 are all correct. However, if you started with E4, after King B5, we are down to 2 winning moves, which I didn't play. I messed it up. I played E5, which is the wrong move. And I want to get this out of the way right away so that we understand what's kicking off here. Now black takes the pawn. I play F5, and they go King B6. Now the issue is that if I push, after take, the king catches the pawn. If I do not, then now the second wave of the pawns come too late. And I simply play A5, G5, take, A4, and it's easy to see that I'm on the 5th, they are on the 4, which means that at the best of times we are going to promote at the same time. And it's not going to be sufficient for a win. It's a draw. The correct way to proceed after E4, King B5 is G4. After king takes A5 now, it's either F5 or G5. E5 still bad. G5, yeah, so E5 bad, let's go F5. Yeah, F6 is never gonna cut it. It just makes matters worse because then we break through and now the pawn is through. The king is a million kilometers away. So F5, King B6, and here comes the big difference. Now we need to play G5, and this is a game-winning threat, which excludes the king. So E5 was a game-winning threat too, but the king inched closer and it's all G. With G5, you have to respond because I'm threatening F6 and the pawn is gonna run in. So now A5, F6 is terminal, yeah? Take, and now I'm a lot faster than this pawn is. And so, after F5, G5, they are forced to play H5, right? And now we are going to make a big difference here, because after E5, they do not have the time to play this, because again, we break through and we promote here. That's the difference, that now we have a pawn on g5, so I don't have to take. I can push past, and again, white wins. So, finally, black here needs to play king c7, and now comes the big cold shower moment. Almost like for like, this is how the game went, by the way, but I will come back to this. f6 takes, and this is where I made my tragic mistake by pushing the pawn up, thinking that I was very clever. The simple capture wins. And this is a beautiful exception to the rule about outside pass pawns, because technically white doesn't have a pass pawn, but really these two count as a pseudo pass pawn, a potential pass pawn, which means that the black king will have to be busy babysitting g6 and will have to stay in this vicinity, which simply means I have all the time in the world to eat the pawn and win the pawn ending. I really don't want to spend too much time on it. Well, first of all, let's clarify that g6 is a threat, so the king has to step closer. And now, if the pawn comes here, we know that this is the square of the pawn, the famous rule that Magnus claims not to know. Whatever. And so we catch up with the pawn, and obviously they cannot pursue hunting pawns, because as soon as they do this, we're done. And that's about it, sorry. Important message from wife. She says, be mindful with pawn breaks. g6, and we win. And so this endgame is now winning. Now, how did I botch it? So first of all, I pushed the wrong pawn. I played e5, and then I played f5. Now this is a draw. But after g4, my opponent, erroneously, instead of playing a5, played king e6. And this loses now, because we can recreate the same scenario. G5 played, h5 played. Of course, takes is not playable on account of h5, and f6 is not stoppable. Very pretty. Because otherwise now I wouldn't have... so if I had to take back, then I wouldn't have the three pawns, only the two. Let me show you what I mean. Now we lose. Because after f6 take king d6, black can actually eat the pawns and win. So we needed the pawn on h4 to win it, which is why it's cool that after takes we have h5 f6. Very, very good stuff. So anyway, opponent played h5, and here the win was there for the taking with f6. Also note that he g6 loses to e6 when the king can't catch up with the pawn anymore. Therefore capture is forced, and here I am an absolute potato, and I played e6. I didn't think here at all. And it turns out that I'm actually losing because of king d6 takes, king e7, g6, and now the pawn is incoming. The irony is that I think if in this position the g6 pawn was on e6, I would still be doing great, because then I could go king f3, a4, king f4. No, I think I will be one move slow. a3, king f5, yeah, one move slow. Just one move. If I had another move, king g7, and I'm promoting and saving the day. So with pawn here, if the king is fast enough, you can make a difference. But with the king or the pawn on the other side, even if I bring my king here, I cannot make a threat. And so I lose. Instead of an easy win that was there for the taking, with taking this 6 and just eat the pawn and win the game. Now, similarly, about a week ago, I saw a Twitter post by a fellow called Michael Bennett, Chess Michael Bennett, and he posted almost this position. The reason why I'm saying almost is because as soon as I looked at his position, an idea occurred to me. His position is without the pawn on e6. So picture there is no pawn on e6, white to move. And his Twitter comment was that black just offered a rook trade on c5, hoping to exploit the pawn majority 3-on-1 on the queen side. But of course that's a dream, because the a and b pawns are blockaded, and white can just go and attack the c pawn, and if the black king goes near to it, then the h pawn is a very fast runner, and it wins. And as soon as I looked at it, I thought to myself, actually, even if I add an extra pawn to black, making it 6 versus 5, White wins this king and pawn ending now because of the outside pass pawn. So this is actually not the exception, but it is a shocking fact because generally speaking, king and pawn endings, especially where all pawns are straight, no doubles, no isolated, nothing like that, it's very rare that with a pawn negative, you have got a super basic win. Like you don't even have to think about it. The only move you need to play here for white to not to botch it, actually, that's your puzzle number 2. What is the only move? Not the only move, the only concept. It can be accomplished with multiple moves, in fact, that you need to ensure that you take care of, for want of a better word, in order to win. Reveal comes now. So the only thing that black threatens with here is to play g5, blockading 2 pawns with 1. The same way how this 1 blockades 2. And so whether it's f4 or the more logical h4, it doesn't matter. But as soon as you play this move, the black king is locked in the square. Well, technically the square is still this. But as soon as I'm stepping up, obviously the king needs to stay in the vicinity. What basically that means is that I can just push the pawn. They will have to wait, and here we go. I'm gonna eat the pawn. And they cannot go as far as that because then the h-pawn runs in. Yeah, if they push the pawn, you can just take it. No worries. Take, h5. Take, and now the king has to go back. And that is going to give you ample time to eat up all the pawns and win the game. If they don't push the pawns, they just go back, then you just go in and take, and you eat up everything. Insanely simple. Like, shockingly simple, considering the fact that white is a pawn down in a king and pawn ending, and the win is just so easy. So, yeah, I wanted to show you these two today. I hope you guys liked these. King and pawn endings are always good ones to train because not only do you improve endgame technique, but you also improve calculation a lot. In fact, pawn endings, generally speaking, improve calculation much more so than endgame technique. And that is gonna be it for us for now. Please don't forget to leave a comment down below. Smash that like button very aggressively. Subscribe if you haven't done so. You can send me a super thanks if you would like to. And I'm going to see you in the next video soon. Thanks for watching.